I want you to imagine something for just a moment. Imagine waking up tomorrow in the exact same bed, in the exact same house, looking at the exact same ceiling you've looked at for years. Nothing has changed. Your salary hasn't changed. Your health hasn't changed. Your confidence hasn't changed. Your dreams are still sitting on a shelf collecting dust. Your excuses are still stronger than your commitment. Now imagine another person. They wake up in the same house, the same city, the same economy, the same problems, the same 24 hours. But somehow, 1 year later, their life is completely different. What changed? Not their luck, not their family, not their education, not the government, not the economy. One thing changed: the way they looked at life, the way they interpreted pain, the way they responded to failure, their mindset. Let me tell you something. The greatest prison in the world is not made of steel. It is made of thoughts. And the saddest part is that most people don't even realize they are living inside it. They have accepted limitations that were never real. Someone once laughed at their dream. Someone once told them they weren't smart enough. Someone once compared them to someone else. Someone once made them feel small. And instead of questioning those opinions, they built a life around them. Think about this for a moment. If I handed you the keys to a Ferrari, but convinced you it could never drive faster than 20 miles an hour, would the car suddenly become slow? No, its potential would remain exactly the same. The only thing limiting it would be the driver's belief. Now ask yourself, how much of your potential has been parked because of a belief that was never true? Years ago, I learned something that completely changed how I looked at success. I met two men. They were almost the same age. They lived in the same neighborhood, worked in the same factory, earned nearly identical salaries. Both had families, both had bills, both had dreams. But 10 years later, one of them had become financially free. He owned businesses. People respected him. He spoke with confidence. He traveled. He inspired others. The second man was still blaming life, still waiting, still complaining, still saying, if only I had more opportunities. I asked myself, how can two people begin from nearly the same place and end up living completely different lives? The answer wasn't intelligence. It wasn't talent. It wasn't luck. It was mindset. One man saw obstacles. The other saw lessons. One saw problems. The other saw opportunities. One asked, why is this happening to me? The other asked, what is this trying to teach me? Do you see the difference? Life did not change. The questions changed. And when your questions change, when your focus changes, when your actions change, your future changes. Here's what most people don't understand. Success is not created on the day you receive the reward. Success is created in the thousands of invisible moments that nobody applauds. The alarm clock rings. No one is watching. You have two choices. Or grow. Your emotions tell you to stay comfortable. Your future begs you to get up. That tiny decision seems insignificant. But life isn't built on giant decisions. Life is built on tiny decisions repeated consistently. The compound effect is one of the greatest miracles you'll ever discover. One page today, another tomorrow. One workout, one healthy meal, 1 hour of learning, one conversation, one difficult decision. They don't look extraordinary. But neither does planting a seed. Look at a seed. It's small. It looks powerless. You could step on it and never think about it again. Yet hidden inside that tiny seed is an entire forest. Potential doesn't announce itself. It develops quietly. The same is true for you. Some of you are judging your life because the tree hasn't appeared yet, but you planted the seed yesterday. Give it time, water it, protect it, believe in it. Because growth is happening beneath the surface long before anyone can see it. Think about bamboo. For years, nothing impressive appears above the ground. People walk past it. They assume nothing is happening. Then suddenly, it shoots upward with astonishing speed. Did it grow overnight? No, it was building roots. Some of you are in your root season. You're learning. You're struggling. You're being rejected. You're doubting yourself. People think you're wasting your time. But they cannot see what is happening beneath the surface. They cannot see your character growing, your discipline growing, your resilience growing, your wisdom growing. And one day, everyone will call you an overnight success, but you and I will know it took years. I learned something else many years ago. Pain has two directions. Pain can either make you bitter or better. Every successful person you've ever admired became friends with discomfort. While everyone else was avoiding pain, they were asking, what can this pain teach me? Most people spend their lives trying to eliminate discomfort. Successful people spend their lives expanding their capacity for discomfort. Because they know something, everything valuable lies on the other side of comfort. Confidence, discipline, leadership, freedom, strength, growth, all of it. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you intentionally did something difficult? Not because you had to, because you chose to. Because every difficult decision sends your mind a message. I keep promises to myself. That sentence changes everything. You see, self-confidence isn't built by motivational speeches. It isn't built by positive affirmations alone. It is built by evidence. Every time you do what you promised yourself you would do, your brain collects evidence that says, I am reliable. I finish what I start. I can trust myself. And when you trust yourself, the world begins trusting you too. Here's something that changed my life forever. Your mind is always listening. Listen carefully, not sometimes, always. Every word you repeatedly tell yourself becomes a command. I can't. Your mind obeys. I'm unlucky. Your mind obeys. I'm always failing. Your mind obeys. I always quit. Your mind obeys. What if, instead, you started saying, I'll find a way. I can learn. I'll become stronger. This challenge is preparing me. Your mind would begin searching for proof. Because that's what the human mind does. It looks for evidence supporting the story you keep repeating. Which story are you telling yourself every day? Because your future is hidden inside that story. Think about a child learning to walk. Hey, have you ever seen a baby fall down, look around, become embarrassed, and say, I guess walking isn't for me? Of course not. The child falls, smiles, tries again, falls again, gets back up, falls 50 times, 100 times. Eventually, walking becomes natural. What happened? Failure wasn't viewed as failure. It was viewed as feedback. Somewhere along the way, adults forgot this lesson. Now we fail once. And we create an identity around it. I failed. Becomes, I am a failure. No. Those are completely different things. Failure is an event, not a person. Ride that again in your mind. Failure is an event, not an identity. The moment you separate who you are from what happened, you become unstoppable. Years ago, I met a man who had lost everything. His business collapsed. His house was gone. His savings disappeared. Friends disappeared. People stopped answering his phone calls. He told me something I'll never forget. He said, I realized I had confused possessions with identity, he said. They took my money. They took my business. They took my title, Dabaliel, but they couldn't take the person who created all of it. That sentence shook me, because if you develop the mindset that built success once, you can build it again. Money can disappear. Skills remain. Opportunities disappear. Character remains. Jobs disappear, creativity remains, everything external can be taken. But a disciplined mind becomes an asset nobody can steal. Here's what most people don't understand. You don't become successful because your circumstances improve. Your circumstances improve because you become successful inside first. The outside always follows the inside. The tree produces fruit because of what exists in the roots. Not because someone taped apples onto its branches. You cannot fake growth forever. Real growth begins within. Every morning, before the world speaks to you, what are you saying to yourself? Before social media tells you who you should be, who are you becoming? Before the news tells you what to fear, what are you choosing to believe? Guard your mind, because everything enters through the gate of thought. Imagine your mind as the most valuable garden on earth. Would you allow anyone to walk into that garden and throw weeds everywhere? Of course not. Yet every day, people allow negativity, comparison, complaining, fear, excuses, doubt to grow freely inside their minds. Then they wonder why they harvest anxiety instead of peace. Success begins with mental gardening. Pull the weeds daily, plant better thoughts, water them with action, protect them from negativity. Repeat day after day, month after month, year after year. And eventually, the harvest becomes impossible to ignore. I remember speaking with a young man who believed his life was over before it had even begun. He wasn't poor because of money. He was poor because of hope. He had convinced himself that nothing would ever change. I asked him one simple question. What if you're wrong? He looked confused. I asked again. What if everything you've believed about your limitations is completely false? Silence. Long silence, then tears. Because sometimes the greatest breakthrough doesn't happen when you discover a new opportunity. It happens when an old lie finally dies. How many lies are you carrying today? I'm too old. I'm too young. I don't have connections. I'm not talented. I missed my chance. Who told you that? Who convinced you that your story was already written? The author of your future hasn't finished the next chapter. And yet people close the book halfway through. Imagine watching the first 20 minutes of a movie. The hero loses everything. He's rejected, broken, confused. Would you stand up and leave the theater saying, I know how this ends? Of course not, because you understand. The middle of the story is never the end of the story. Why then? Do you judge your own life in the middle of the story? Perhaps this chapter is painful. Perhaps this chapter is lonely. Perhaps this chapter is full of uncertainty. But chapters change if you keep writing. And that's where mindset becomes everything. Not because mindset magically removes problems, but because mindset determines whether problems become prisons or classrooms. Every challenge asks the same silent question. Who are you becoming because of me? And every answer you give shapes the person you will meet 1 year from now. Let me tell you something I wish every young person understood. You don't rise to the level of your dreams. You rise to the level of your daily habits. Dreams inspire you. Habits transform you. A person who reads 10 pages every day may not notice much difference after 1 week. After 1 month, perhaps only a little. After 5 years, they're speaking differently, thinking differently, making different decisions, meeting different people, living a different life. Not because of one dramatic moment, but because of thousands of invisible choices that compounded into an extraordinary future. And that's why mindset is never just positive thinking. It's a commitment to interpreting life in a way that produces growth instead of surrender. Because every single day, whether you realize it or not, your mind is asking one question over and over again. What does this mean? When someone criticizes you, what does it mean? When you lose money, what does it mean? When someone rejects you, what does it mean? When you fail, what does it mean? Most people answer too quickly. They say it means I'm not good enough. But what if it means you're being prepared for a level that requires greater patience, greater discipline, and greater courage? What if the setback isn't there to stop you, but to reveal the parts of you that still need to grow? And once you begin seeing life through that lens, you start noticing that the people who eventually change the world are rarely the ones who had the easiest path. They're the ones who refuse to let their circumstances become the author of their identity. Because identity is the foundation upon which every decision is built. Think about this for a moment. A person who believes, I'm the kind of person who always quits, doesn't have to struggle to quit. Quitting feels natural. A person who believes, I'm disciplined, doesn't have to negotiate every morning. Discipline becomes part of who they are. Do you see the difference? Behavior always follows identity. That is why changing your life is never just about changing your schedule. It's about changing the story you tell yourself about who you are. Years ago, I sat across from a man who had spent nearly 30 years working in the same place. Every day looked identical. Wake up, go to work, come home tired, watch television, leave, repeat. One evening, he looked in the mirror and realized something terrifying. He wasn't living intentionally anymore. He was surviving automatically. And that's a dangerous place to be. Because habits are wonderful servants, but terrible masters. If you build your habits, will build you. But if you never choose them, life will choose them for you. He made one decision. Not 10, not 50. One. He decided that before anyone else in the house woke up, he would spend 1 hour investing in himself. 1 hour. That's all. He began reading, learning, writing notes, listening to people who had built lives he admired. He wasn't looking for shortcuts. He was looking for transformation. After 6 months, nobody noticed. After a year, a few people noticed. After 3 years, people started calling him lucky. Isn't that interesting? People only notice the harvest. They rarely notice the planting. They celebrate the victory. They ignore the thousands of mornings that made the victory possible. Here's what most people don't understand. The life everyone applauds, is usually built in moments nobody ever sees. The workout nobody posted, the book nobody knew you were reading, the tears nobody watched, the lonely nights, the difficult conversations, the sacrifices, the temptations resisted. Success has always loved privacy. It grows quietly before it announces itself publicly. Let me ask you something. If nobody ever applauded your progress, would you still keep growing? That question separates dreamers from builders, because dreamers often need applause. Builders need purpose. Purpose is powerful. Purpose wakes you up when motivation sleeps. Purpose keeps you moving when emotions become unreliable. Motivation is wonderful, but motivation is like weather. Some days it's sunny. Some days it's stormy. If your future depends on motivation, your future will always be uncertain. Discipline says, I'll continue even when I don't feel inspired. And here's something I learned after watching successful people for many years. They don't make fewer emotional decisions because they have stronger emotions. They make fewer emotional decisions because they have stronger principles. Principles become anchors. When emotions rise, principles remain. Imagine a ship in the middle of an ocean. Storms come, waves crash, the wind screams. What keeps the ship from drifting endlessly? An anchor. Your principles are the anchors of your life. When fear shows up, your principles keep you steady. When doubt whispers, your principles answer back. When comfort invites you to stop, your principles remind you why you started. Without principles, every emotion becomes your leader. And emotions make terrible leaders. Here's something I wish someone had told me much earlier. Your feelings deserve respect, but they do not deserve control. There will be mornings you don't feel confident. Speak anyway. There will be days you don't feel courageous. Leave anyway. There will be weeks you don't feel disciplined. Continue anyway. Action creates emotion far more often than emotion creates action. Most people wait until they feel ready. The extraordinary learn that readiness is usually created after movement begins. Think about learning to swim. Can you read every book about swimming, watch every documentary, and become a swimmer? No. Eventually, you must enter the water. Growth has always required participation, not observation. Some people spend years preparing for a life they never begin. They organize, plan, research, think, analyze, wait. Perfect delay. Another month passes, another year disappears, another opportunity quietly walks by. Then they wonder why nothing changes. Here's the truth. Perfection is often fear wearing an expensive suit. It looks responsible. It sounds intelligent. But underneath, it is still fear. Fear saying, what if I fail? What if you do? Then you'll learn. What if people judge me? They already are. People judge people who try. They judge people who don't try. You cannot escape opinions. So why surrender your dreams trying to avoid something that is impossible anyway? Think about every remarkable person you've ever admired. At some point, someone doubted them. Someone criticized them. Someone laughed. Someone predicted failure. Imagine if they had accepted those predictions as permanent truth. The world would have lost incredible contributions. Never confuse someone's opinion with your potential. They're not the same thing. A seed doesn't ask the soil for permission to grow. The sunrise doesn't wait for applause before appearing. An eagle doesn't consult chickens before flying. Why then do so many people ask permission from ordinary thinking before pursuing extraordinary lives? Listen carefully. Not everyone will understand your vision, and they don't have to, because it wasn't placed inside their heart. It was placed inside yours. Protect it, feed it, develop it. Some dreams are too precious to expose to constant negativity. Have you ever noticed that gardeners place fences around young trees? Why? Because they're weak? No, because they're valuable. The tree isn't protected because it's useless. It's protected because it's growing. Sometimes you need to protect your own growth the same way. Protect your peace. Protect your focus. Protect your mornings. Protect your attention. Attention has become one of the most valuable currencies in the modern world. Everyone wants it. Advertisements want it. Notifications want it. Algorithms want it. People want it. But here's the question. What do you give your attention to every day? Because whatever captures your attention eventually captures your life. If you spend years feeding your mind comparison, you'll harvest insecurity. If you spend years feeding your possibility, you'll harvest confidence. Your mind cannot grow healthy on a diet of negativity. Just as your body reflects what you repeatedly eat, your character reflects what you repeatedly consume mentally. Every conversation, every book, every video, every thought, every environment. They are all feeding something inside you. The question isn't whether you're being influenced. The question is, by whom? And toward what? I remember meeting a teacher who changed thousands of lives. People assumed he had some magical ability. One day I asked him, "What's your secret?" He smiled. He said, "I stopped trying to change people's circumstances before changing their perspective." That sentence stayed with me, because perspective changes everything. Imagine two stone cutters working side by side. Someone walks up to the first man and asks, "What are you doing?" He sighs. "I'm cutting rocks." The visitor walks to the second man. "What are you doing?" The second man smiles. "I'm building a cathedral." Same hammer, same stone, same heat, same effort, completely different mindset. One saw labor. The other saw legacy. Your perspective gives meaning to your effort. Without meaning, even small tasks feel exhausting. With meaning, even great sacrifices become worthwhile. That's why purpose gives ordinary people extraordinary endurance. A mother wakes up in the middle of the night to care for her child. She's exhausted. Yet she continues. Why? Love gives energy that comfort never could. A young entrepreneur works long hours, building something no one believes in. Why? Vision gives strength that convenience never provides. Meaning changes everything. Here's another truth. Your environment matters, but your internal environment matters even more. I've seen people surrounded by opportunity who remained miserable. I've also seen people surrounded by difficulty who built extraordinary lives. The difference wasn't geography. It was philosophy. One person believed life owed them something. The other believed life was offering lessons. One complained about the weather. The other learned to sail. Storms don't determine the quality of the sailor. They reveal it. And life has a remarkable way of revealing what's already inside you. Pressure doesn't create character. Pressure exposes character. If frustration immediately turns into anger, pressure revealed impatience. If criticism immediately destroys your confidence, pressure revealed dependence on approval. If failure causes you to stop believing in yourself, pressure revealed fragile identity. But here's the beautiful part. Whatever pressure reveals can be strengthened. Nothing has to remain permanent. You are not trapped by yesterday's version of yourself. One of the greatest lies ever believed is that personality is fixed forever. No, you can become more patient. You can become more courageous. You can become more disciplined. You can become more grateful. You can become wiser. Growth is available to anyone willing to practice it. Think about a blacksmith forging steel. He places the metal into fire. Then he strikes it again and again and again. If the steel could speak, it might call the process unfair, painful, unnecessary. But the blacksmith sees something the steel cannot yet see. Strength, shop, purpose. Sometimes life feels like that forge. The heat rises, the pressure increases, the hammer falls again. And you wonder, why is this happening? Perhaps because life isn't trying to destroy you. Perhaps it's removing everything that cannot carry the weight of the future you're asking for. You pray for wisdom. Life sends difficult decisions. You pray for courage. Life sends fear. You pray for patience. Life sends waiting. You pray for strength. Life sends resistance. Not as something. The answer rarely arrives as comfort. It arrives as opportunity to develop the very quality you requested. That changes how you see hardship, because now every challenge becomes an invitation instead of an interruption. An invitation to grow beyond the limits of who you used to be. And once you begin living that way, something fascinating starts happening. The things that once intimidated, you begin looking smaller. Not because life became easier, but because you became larger on the inside. The mountain didn't shrink. The climber became stronger. The problem didn't disappear. Your perspective expanded. Your capacity increased. Your emotional endurance deepened. And that's why the strongest people are rarely those who avoided hardship. They're the ones who allowed hardship to educate them instead of define them. I once met an elderly gentleman who had every reason to become bitter. He had experienced loss that most people couldn't imagine. He had buried dreams. He had endured rejection. He had watched plans fall apart. Yet every time you spoke with him, there was peace in his voice, not fake positivity, not denial. Real peace. I finally asked him, "How did you become this calm after everything you've been through?" He looked out the window for a long moment before answering. Then he quietly said, "I stopped asking life to remove every storm, and I started asking life to teach me how to become the kind of person who could keep walking through them." And when he finished speaking, there was silence. Not the uncomfortable kind of silence, the kind of silence that makes you look inward, the kind of silence that forces you to ask yourself questions you've been avoiding for years. I remember driving home that evening, and I couldn't stop thinking about those words, because I realized something. Most of us spend our lives negotiating with reality. We keep saying, "I'll be happy when, I'll be confident when, I'll start when, I'll believe in myself when I have more money, when I have more time, when people finally support me, when everything becomes easier." But life keeps whispering, no. You become that person first. Then the circumstances begin to change. Here's what most people don't understand. The world doesn't simply respond to what you want. It responds to who you become. Think about a magnet. A magnet doesn't chase metal. It attracts it because of what it is. Success works much the same way. Opportunity is attracted to preparation. Trust is attracted to character. Leadership is attracted to responsibility. Influence is attracted to consistency. The question isn't, what am I trying to get? The deeper question is, what am I becoming every single day? Because becoming always comes before receiving. Years ago, I watched a young athlete preparing for a championship. Every morning before sunrise, he was already training. When everyone else was sleeping, he was running. When everyone else was making excuses, he was practicing fundamentals, not glamorous skills, fundamentals, the same movements, Egan. One day I asked him, "Don't you get bored?" He smiled. He said something I'll never forget. The crowd falls in love with highlights, but champions fall in love with repetition. Think about that. Champions fall in love with repetition, not excitement, not entertainment. Repetition, because they understand that excellence isn't an event, it's a habit. The greatest musicians don't become extraordinary because they perform brilliantly once. They become extraordinary because they practiced ordinary things thousands of times. The greatest speakers don't suddenly wake up inspiring millions. They earn that ability sentence by sentence, speech by speech, failure by failure, adjustment by adjustment. Mastery is simply ordinary actions performed with extraordinary consistency. That is why mindset matters so much, because your mindset determines whether repetition feels like punishment or progress. One person says, "I have to practice." Another says, "I get to improve." Same action, different meaning. And meaning determines motivation. Have you ever noticed that two people can go through the exact same experience and walk away completely different? One loses a job, becomes angry, complains for years, tells everyone how unfair life is. Another loses a job, cries, feels disappointed, then asks, "What skill do I need to develop so this never controls my future again?" 5 years later, they're living completely different lives. The event wasn't the difference. The interpretation was. That's why protecting your interpretation of events is one of the greatest responsibilities you'll ever have. Because every experience enters your life as raw material. Your mindset decides what it becomes. Failure can become wisdom or bitterness. Criticism can become improvement or insecurity. Delay can become preparation or frustration. Pain can become purpose or permanent resentment. You choose every single day, not once, repeatedly, choice after choice, thought after thought, reaction after reaction. I learned something from watching nature. A river never argues with a rock. It simply continues flowing, day after day, month after month, year after year. Eventually, the rock changes shape, not because the river was stronger in one dramatic moment, but because consistency possesses a quiet power that force can never imitate. Some of you keep looking for one giant breakthrough, one miracle, one opportunity, one perfect moment. Meanwhile, your future is quietly asking for one more consistent day, one more disciplined morning, one more honest conversation, one more chapter, one more workout, one more act of courage. Never underestimate one more. Lives are changed by one more decision not to quit, one more application, one more attempt, one more lesson, one more hour invested instead of wasted. History is full of people who succeeded because they refused to stop one step too early. Imagine if a miner stopped digging just 3 feet before reaching gold. Imagine carrying that regret forever. How many dreams have been abandoned just before the breakthrough? We don't know. Because the people who quit never discover how close they really were. That is why persistence is so powerful. Dispensant says, "I don't need guarantees. I only need another opportunity to try." Here's another lesson life taught me. Comparison is one of the quietest thieves you'll ever encounter. It rarely announces itself. It whispers. It whispers while you're scrolling through your phone. It whispers while someone else receives recognition. It whispers while another person's business grows faster. Another person's family looks happier. Another person's journey appears easier. Comparison whispers, you're behind. But behind whom? Life is not a race against another human being. It's a responsibility to become the fullest expression of the gifts you've been given. You have no idea what battles another person is fighting behind closed doors. You see the smile. You don't see the anxiety. You see the success. You don't see the sacrifice. You see the destination. You don't see the decades. Stop comparing your beginning to someone else's middle. Stop comparing your private struggles to someone else's public victories. Instead, compare yourself to the person you were yesterday. Ask better questions. Am I becoming kinder? Am I becoming stronger? Am I becoming wiser? Am I keeping more promises to myself? Am I reacting differently than I used to? Because real progress is often invisible while it's happening. It's like watching a child grow. Dot currents don't notice dramatic change every day. But relatives who visit after a year can't believe how much the child has changed. Growth feels slow while you're living it. But when enough time passes, the transformation becomes undeniable. That's why patience is a form of intelligence. Impatience says, I deserve immediate results. Wisdom says, the process is producing something deeper than I can currently see. Have you ever planted anything? The farmer doesn't dig up the seed every morning to check if it's growing. Imagine how ridiculous that would be. Plant, dig it up, plant it again, dig it up. Nothing would ever grow. Yet people do this with their dreams. They commit for 3 days. Then panic. They commit for 1 month. Then doubt. They keep interrupting their own progress because they confuse silence with failure. Just because you cannot see movement doesn't mean movement isn't happening. Roots grow in darkness. Character grows in obscurity. Integrity develops when nobody is watching. The strongest foundations are almost always invisible. Think about skyscrapers. Before they rise into the clouds, engineers spend enormous amounts of time building underground. Why? Because the height of the building is limited by the depth of the foundation. The same is true of your life. Everyone wants visible success. Few people are willing to build invisible strength, humility, patience, discipline, self-control, gratitude. These are foundations. They don't attract applause, but they hold your future together when success finally arrives. Successes without character becomes dangerous because whatever you become before success usually becomes amplified after success. If you're grateful before success, you'll likely remain grateful afterward. If you're arrogant before success, success often magnifies it. That's why your mindset today matters more than the rewards tomorrow. I once heard a mentor say something that completely changed my understanding of achievement. He said, if success arrived tomorrow, would your character be strong enough to keep it? What a question most people ask. How do I get success? Few ask. How do I become capable of carrying success? Because success is heavy. Responsibility is heavy. Leadership is heavy. Influence is heavy. If your character isn't prepared, the very thing you prayed for can become the thing that overwhelms you. That's why preparation is an act of respect for your future. Every disciplined morning says, I'm preparing. Every difficult choice says, I'm preparing. Every book you read, every skill you practice, every excuse you refuse to accept, every promise you keep, you're preparing for opportunities you haven't even seen yet. Think about an orchestra before the audience ever arrives. The musicians have already spent countless hours practicing alone. The applause belongs to one evening. The preparation belongs to years. Life works the same way. People often admire moments. Heaven rewards preparation. And here's where many people lose their way. They become addicted to outcomes. They only feel valuable if they win. Only feel worthy if they're praised. Only feel successful if everyone notices. That's exhausting because your emotional life becomes controlled by circumstances outside your influence. Instead, fall in love with the process. Love becoming. Love learning. Love improving. Love showing up. Love keeping promises to yourself. Because process is always available. Results aren't always immediate. But the process is. Every sunrise gives you another chance to become slightly stronger than yesterday. Not perfect, stronger, not flawless, wiser, not finished, growing. And there's tremendous freedom in realizing you don't have to become the greatest overnight. You simply have to refuse becoming less than you're capable of. I remember meeting a woman who decided to rebuild her life after years of believing she wasn't intelligent enough to pursue the career she truly wanted. She had heard those words as a child. They're smarter than you. You're not academic. Be realistic. For years, she accepted those voices as facts until one afternoon, her young daughter came home from school crying because another child had told her she wasn't smart. The mother held her daughter close and immediately said, "Don't ever let someone else's opinion become your identity." Then she stopped speaking because she realized something. She had just given her daughter advice she had never given herself. That night, she sat alone in her kitchen, no applause, no audience, just a notebook, a cup of coffee, and a lifetime of limiting beliefs spread out in front of her. She wrote down every sentence she had believed about herself, every label, every excuse, every fear that had quietly become part of her identity. Then beside each one, she asked a question that would begin changing the direction of her entire life. Who would I be if I stopped believing this? And as I stand here looking at you, I don't see your past. I don't see your mistakes. I don't see your failures. I don't see the nights you cried when no one knew. I don't see the opportunities you missed. I don't see the dreams that slipped through your fingers. I see something far more powerful. I see possibility. I see a future that hasn't been written yet. I see men and women who have far more inside them than they've ever dared to believe. But let me tell you one final truth. One day, years from now, you will meet the person you could have become. Not literally, but in your heart. You will look back on your life. You will remember this season. You will remember these decisions. You will remember the mornings when the alarm rang. The moments when fear whispered. The days when quitting looked easier than continuing. And in that moment, there will only be one question that matters. Did you become the person you were capable of becoming? Because life will never ask you why someone else succeeded. Life will never ask why someone else was wealthier or more talented or more connected. Life will quietly ask, what did you do with what I gave you? Don't let your greatest dream become your greatest regret. Don't spend your future wishing you had started today. Don't wait for confidence. Confidence is built by action. Don't wait for the perfect opportunity. Opportunity often disguises itself as hard work. Don't wait until fear disappears. Move while your knees are shaking. Move while your voice trembles. Move while the path is uncertain, because courage has never been the absence of fear. Courage is deciding that your purpose is greater than your fear. Remember this. Your future is not created by what you do once in a while. It is created by what you refuse to stop doing. The book you read today, the workout you finish today, the promise you keep today, the excuse you reject today, the discipline you choose today, the person you decide to become today. These moments seem small, but history is written by small moments repeated with extraordinary consistency. Years from now, people will look at your life and call it success. They'll call it talent. They'll call it luck. But you will know the truth. You will remember the mornings no one applauded, the sacrifices no one noticed, the tears no one saw. The lonely decisions, the quiet victories, the thousands of times you chose discipline over comfort. And those choices, those invisible, ordinary choices, will have become an extraordinary life. So when you leave here today, leave behind the excuses. Leave behind the story that says you're too late. Leave behind the version of yourself that has been waiting for permission. You don't need permission. You need a decision. A single decision. A decision to stop negotiating with your potential. A decision to stop introducing yourself by your past. A decision to become the author of the next chapter. Stand up tomorrow with a different mindset. Walk differently. Think differently. Speak differently. Protect your mind, guard your habits, honor your word, respect your future. Because every sunrise is asking you the same question. Who are you becoming today? And every sunset records your answer. Never forget this. The life you dream about is not waiting for a different version of the world. It is waiting for a different version of you. So rise when it's difficult. Rise when no one believes in you. Rise when your progress is invisible. Rise when you fall. Rise again and again and again. Because the greatest transformation is never the one the world sees first. It is the one that happens silently within your own mind. The moment you truly change your mindset, you change your decisions, you change your habits, you change your direction, you change your destiny. And one day, when you look back on this very moment, you'll realize that your life did not change because you found an easier road. It changed because you became a stronger traveler. Now go. Protect your mind like it's your greatest treasure. Feed it with wisdom. Strengthen it with discipline. Let it with purpose. And from this day forward, let every choice declare to the world and to yourself, my mindset is everything. My future begins today, and I will not stop until my life becomes proof of what is possible.